Hey BookTube, welcome to Myers Mega Fictional Musings. Thanks for tuning in today. Beautiful art is endless and eternal. But just like film and music, some books will be uniquely mine to enjoy. And what I mean by that is I have a real and insistent part of me that always will be frustrated and sort of sad because my passion for something is impossible to articulate. I've got this weird thing where I feel like I always need to share something that I love. I think other people have it as well, but for me it's really bad. And I need to learn to be more often just satisfied with something for myself and be okay with that. So I think like I said, there's a desire for other people to want to share as well, I think, but as I said, for me, I love what I love, and I want other people to love it too. And I know it's good too. By the way, I do know it's good. But again, I need to just be okay with the fact that perhaps no one else on God's green earth likes some things as much as I do. And I'm thinking of a few particular songs and movies and books, of course. So I need to be okay with that. Now, this would apply to the book I want to review in this video, for sure. And it's Disobedience by Michael Drinkard. Needless to say, I was completely blown away by the quality of this relatively short book. It feels like the most postmodern book I have ever read. Taking into account, of course, the fact that it was written when I was only 12 years old. I would look forward to my time in this book perhaps more than anything else I have ever read. Perhaps that's because it's a reasonable length. I mean, it's just your standard size book. It's nothing massive. So for me, it's actually kind of small. But there were no parts in it that were tedious or difficult or fluffy whatsoever. So in this book, I was emotionally connected to the characters, deeply riveted by the plot. Highly intrigued by all the postmodern elements and this sense of unreality that Drinkard created. And I was amused by the offbeat and understated humor that he incorporates as well, not to mention some scenes that were pretty shocking and contained its fair share of violence and despair. I can understand why some people might not be drawn towards Thomas Pynchon or even William Gass or James Patterson for that matter, but I really do think that everyone would get something from this novel to some extent. Now, I'll be pushing on my family and friends for sure. So if you have not read this, or I'm going to assume most of you haven't read this, you need to try and get your hands on this book. I'm telling you. When I got it at a thrift store here in town and just kind of browsing, and whenever I go, I always try and get one book that I've never heard of whatsoever, and I'll do read a little bit of it, maybe read the first part, but right in the insert there it says it compares it to Crying of Lot 49 in some way. So obviously I bought it, needless to say, and it is an instant top 10 favorite of mine, you guys, as cliche as that will sound. So I want to be particularly aware of spoilers in this review because I do want everyone to read this book. So I need to be very, very careful here. There are so many amazing elements. As I said, the characters are super engaging. And I think the best part about it, though, was how, again, just it oozes of postmodernism. He creates this world, Drinkard does, that is, oddly elusive, but also kind of familiar too, and it's scary. It seems like it's something that could happen in the future. So it's very accessible and effective structure-wise because the narrative strands are, and you can think of these in terms of generations. By the way, there's 3 narrative strands or generations, and they are separated in the text by just a remote control, which is pretty neat. Okay, so it's easy to follow, and structure-wise, within each of those remote control chapters, he does paragraph breaks as well. which for me is very, very useful because I do read in kind of small chunks, and I need to bookmark sections that have, physical breaks for me, whether it's a chapter break or just a space in the text. So I did appreciate that. But on that note, I still will read Duck's Newburyport, even though the text is just text. I don't know where I'm going to bookmark in that book, but I'll figure it out because I will read that one day. There are also a few little factoids about oranges in this book, which actually play a pretty significant role in the novel itself. And Drinkard kind of uses another little graphic for this part, just a little orange there, and he gives little factoids as a bit of a side thing in this book. So Drinkard gives pretty much equal attention to these three narratives I referred to. Okay. So there's what I think of as a present day narrative where these postmodern elements are shown the most. And in this one, we focus on an adolescent boy named Aaron, his brother Billy, and his dad Franklin Wells, and his wife, their mom, Mavie, and who we learn has died somewhat recently and very mysteriously. So this recent narrative is fascinating. You have a whole bunch of characters that are kind of acquaintances or friends of this Wells family, and some of it focuses on Franklin, a lot of it focuses on Aaron and his sexual struggles and just whatever. They're hanging out with their friends at this in their pool at their home, but it's very engaging. Then there's a middle narrative, and this one focuses on Franklin more as a younger man, where he's climbing the corporate ladder, meeting women, eventually his future wife, Mavie, and their early courtship. And then there's an early narrative, which is also very, very fascinating, and we focus there on Mavie's, it would be her great grandparents, Luther and Eliza Tibbets, and their struggles, and this takes place in 1885, by the way, and their struggles to conceive a child. And Eliza is really, really obsessed with Southern California's orange groves, and she actually plants the first orange tree in the area, in the world perhaps. And this eventually leads to her being kind of a minor celebrity. And she has an odd but very far-reaching encounter with soon-to-be president William McKinley, who is a real character as well. So I liked how he incorporated some real characters too. So these narratives are really, really easy to follow, you guys. Just so engaging. I mean, as I said, the world in the recent narrative, this postmodern world is, spooky and odd. And it contrasts quite a bit with the 1885 narrative because Luther and Eliza Tibbets are, they just kind of live simpler. I mean, they have their struggles as well, but it just seems like their world is different. So the prose itself, to me, is best described by Dennis Drabell of USA Today, and he says, "The verve of the storytelling and the neon charm of the prose yields unexpected pleasure on pretty much every page." And this absolutely nails it. I look forward to my time in this book every time I sat down to read it. I finished it in about 4 or 5 days. The vocabulary used is fairly simple, but always accurate. There's very, very few words I didn't know. The sentences themselves are just standard length. There's none of these page-long, not that I don't like this, but there's none of the page-long sentences that really, really carry on and it's hard to stay with. The dialogue is straightforward, coherent, witty, with quotation marks, which is a nice return after my slog through the recognitions. So I do believe that so few people have actually read this book. But so I really don't want to spoil anything, as I said, but I would love to get people's thoughts on the ending and all that it means, because like any good postmodern novel, I think it has a lot to say about our world and our society right now. And it also has a lot to say about many other things, but among others, the dynamic of most families. And how it contrasts with previous generations, as I talked about. And I just feel like Drinkard wanted to communicate the fact that, You know, in this day and age, we compare it to, say, 1885. There was just less stuff to worry about, I guess. I mean, things were simpler and more beautiful and pure. Yes, times were tougher in many ways, but there was like a sense of unity and passion and righteousness that is lacking this day and age. So Drinkard also incorporates a number of effective elements to this novel that kept me on my toes and riveted to the story and characters. Some of these he does, most of them, he absolutely ties up very effectively in the end, but he also leaves a few things kind of teasingly unclear in the story. But the whole novel is really wonderfully anchored by a very effective prologue and epilogue. And it's an event that ties this story together really, really nicely. And I went straight back when I finished with my jaw on the floor and read the prologue again. And I just realized again what a masterpiece, honestly, this book is. All right, so despite the fact that I feel pretty inept at doing this book justice, and I don't want to give anything away, I think it's important to read some excerpts to you so you can maybe just get a bit of a sense, okay? Now, here, just this little blurb, I mean, we get a lot of perspective from Aaron, but we get also from other characters. His mom, Mavie, is another likable character, and here's her kind of narrating and talking about how much she loves her son, Aaron, who is a very likable character, even though he has his struggles, right? So they're talking, and Aaron says, "I'm hungry too," Aaron said, watching. He was suntanned, huge blue eyes, with her crazy, out-of-control hair. Her oldest boy didn't walk, but ran, didn't sleep, but fell unconscious, didn't eat, but gorged. He was fiercely physical, super oxygenated, terrific. "Eat your orange." The Grove was the one thing she loved about living here. Everything else about Southern California scared her. So here's another little excerpt from the 1885 earliest narrative with Mavie's great-grandparents, Luther and Eliza Tibbets. And their daughter was named Frances. Frances Tibbets, 5 years old tomorrow, was already one of the richest citizens in the Inland Empire. For Eliza, having had a child was a simple miracle. Eliza sat in a fat chair before the fireplace, feeling thanks. Theirs was a happy family. She and Luther had only hurt each other deeply twice, maybe 3 times, but those were bygones. Just a little bit further down here. He growled mischievously, pecking her gently on the cheek. She put down her catalog and, hugging him around the neck, kissed his newly regrown beard in 4 places. The fire popped and sparkled as if on cue, and they both laughed. Luther rose and poured out 2 snifters, singing in a surprisingly melodic baritone. Eliza sipped her orange liqueur, not bad, and felt unimaginably peaceful. It didn't even bother her that Franny seemed to like her father more. So it just gives you a really immersive sense of what life was like for them. And of course, they are the origins of this Orange Grove empire that, you know, Franklin and Mavie have in the most recent narrative. So it's fascinating. Here's another fascinating little bit from the middle narrative where Franklin and Mavie are kind of just young and first getting together. And talking about those postmodern elements, there's suggestions of some kind of weird cosmic event that is happening, and the 2 of them are going to some kind of outdoor area or space where they can, some kind of mineral bath or natural mineral bath where they can see this cosmic event that's going to happen. And there's certain like baths or pools that are separated and other people are there, so they're going to this. She went on to the tubs while Franklin entered the locker room. Cement benches ran under the bare light bulbs, but an eclectic crowd gathered for the cosmic fireworks gave the room personality. A long-haired woman in lacy lingerie and red plastic-rimmed glasses struggled to pull a notebook computer out of a shoulder bag. Someone popped the cork from a bottle of champagne and screamed, "Let's get fucked up." He had an evangelist's pompadour. A little bit later on here, Tattoo Man nodded once, then sat next to Lingerie Lady, who was booting up the laptop. Franklin wondered at the almost cartoonish aim of her sex appeal. You didn't see too much of that anymore. There's some final musings here, guys. I can't say enough good things about this book. Like I talked about, I mean, who is Michael Drinkard? Well, looking at him online, handsome fella, and he sure can write. He's got 2 other novels. Maybe I'll post a link to some of the reviews I have found on him. But gosh, if you see this book, do buy it. Better yet, order it online. I can't say enough good things about it. Like I said, it was an amazing companion for me. I was in my own world reading this for just under a week. So good. It's an ode to oranges as well. Found myself eating a couple of oranges while I was reading in the morning, but I can't say enough good things, you guys. I'm going on and on here. I should wrap it up, but Michael Drinkard is a very underappreciated author. I think it's fair to say that. So do pick up Disobedience if you can, and you need to let me know if you've heard of this author or read this book in the comments below. Okay, I hope you guys are doing awesome. Thanks for watching. We'll talk soon.